We're back.
Well, one of the comments that I want to make before Violeta gets started is the fact that we've allowed the system to make immigration about a specific group of people. And at the end of the day, migration and immigration hits every ethnic group that's out there, right? And so let's not what the reason why I wanted her to come on and the reason why we invited you on, Violeta, is because you have, Violeta, you have the information and the education and the opportunity to help us open up our minds and expand our minds and give us some homework on what we can do to help support our community. Because at the end of the day, what affects your community affects my community. And we can tend to allow media in particular to separate and segregate us and have us thinking that it's them versus us. So again, I want to thank you for being willing to educate us and give us that opportunity to support each other. I'm gonna shut up.
Thank you, Robin. And like I want to first and foremost, I don't have a presentation. I wanted this to be very much a conversation, but I want to center, my, this conversation. I don't want to pontificate and say that I'm an immigration expert because I'm not. A lot of, I'm coming first and foremost as I'm experienced as an immigrant myself. I moved here to the United States from when I was 15 years old from Mexico, and my family story is very much that of search of a better opportunity. My parents made that very difficult decision to uproot two teenagers from our family, from everything that we knew, in search of a better life and a better future and better education and better opportunities. And I feel very fortunate to be now at this, and to be here with you, to share some of that experience. And then, throughout my career and throughout my work, so starting as a community organizer and working around immigrant rights, post 9/11, when some of that, post 9/11, there was this clampdown on immigration, and and some of that, the aftermath of the post 9/11, DHS and some of the deportations that were happening, and then as working in some policy when I was in the state legislature, working around Latino issues, and now just in working very closely with our communities on the day-to-day that are affected by this. So circling back to kind of how Robin got us started, it is when we are in an election year, so the economy, immigration, resources is very much at the top of everyone's minds. And unfortunately, for immigrant communities, our immigration policy really is this political football that just keep being tossed back and forth, and there's been opportunities that we can go back to Democratic administrations where there could have been opportunities to maybe address some of the issues happening at that time, with trying to actually come up with comprehensive immigration reform, when so when Obama was president, unfortunately that couldn't happen, so then DACA took place, so that's deferral, that deferral action, child deport, so which allow many undocumented young people to not legalize their status, but at least being able to have access to work permits and to be able to so there's at the federal level there's been some minor opportunities that have been able, but not that full political will to be able to make that comprehensive hasn't happened in the last 30 years. And then, obviously 2016, I mean, our immigrant community really became, subjected to a lot of, I mean, we saw the influx of migrant children, we saw the way that the the Trump administration responded to some the forcing asylum seekers, that which under international law are once they're in U.S. territory, it is up to the U.S. government to process those asylum seekers and to provide the infrastructure for those processes to be moved. But unfortunately, it's just been like this snowball, of one thing after another, and just at the end of the day, lack of political will from both parties to be able to want to actually address the issue. In the meantime, we see this whole right wing ramping up the rhetoric and continuing to vilify our communities and shut down the border. And the most now, to kind of going now to just last month, there was finally a bipartisan bill that the Senate got through, and then ultimately, it died. So once again, we are left with nothing. It is once again, this political just talking point, and there's no real solutions. And for a very, very real problem, because the fact of the matter is that we have when you look at we have an influx of people which coming still trying to seek asylum for the very first time in the last few years. The majority of the people coming to the United States are not from Mexico. They're coming from South America. They're coming from Central America, where it's not the only men looking for work while the families stay at home, which is that's how our immigration system was built to process those type of migrants. But now you have families, you have children, you have from many different countries that are that are escaping political violence, climate change, economic, trying to look for economic opportunities. So when you look at the different where people are coming from, it varies, but at how we are addressing, and the real economic impact and benefit that those immigrants provide for our country are very real. Our immigrant, communities are paying taxes. Our immigrant communities are very much at the core. I mean, fortunately for us, we're here in California, which California was Mexico. So that history of migration has always been there. So now it's as Robin was mentioning, it's an opportunity for us to now, first and foremost, somebody that has worked campaigns is, how do we make sure that our communities actually come out and support those that are going to support those good policies? We just had an election in March, and we talked about that last time I was here with you guys. And I am afraid that some of the issues that we talked about around apathy, around, our communities just not coming out to vote happened. So now how do we, together, like Robin was saying, we motivate our communities to say, like, immigration, yes, it's a very important issue that affects all of us, but it's up to our leaders to actually address it and stop the political football that is happening, with like, it's your turn, because nobody, and at the end of the day, our border communities are being affected. Mm-hmm. California as a country, as a state that has a very large migrant population, we are, fortunately, we're very progressive in that, driver's licenses, it took a very long time to be able to get that, for our undocumented immigrants to be able to have access to driver's license. But that's a possibility, now undocumented individuals have access to healthcare here but that's not the case in the Texas, where now you look like you're undocumented and you can get rounded up and, and put in, and process for postal deportation. So, you look like me and we can, or my brother, can be driving down and so the similarities and of some of the, policies that have been enacted in our communities are there. And, so that's sort of like, just big picture of kind of how the importance of voting and those policies and electing those people, because then at the end of the day, like our communities, then it's just rhetoric.
Yeah, and China and India immigration outpaces what's coming from Central America. So
Mhm.
No, it's exactly right. And I want to welcome some vagabond that just straggled in here to the community room, the Reverend Kelvin Sauls. Welcome. I see you in here posting, so welcome to our community briefing. We're good friends, so I call him affectionately a little vagabond, but um,
Good to see everybody. Good to be here, man. Enjoying the conversation.
good, good. So
Violetta, oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead, Robin. Go ahead, Rob.
Violetta, I just, for us, can you provide to us, or help us identify some of the champions? Who do we need to be supporting who can help help move the needle? Because at the end of the day, we all know what the challenge is. We all know what the problem is. We all are, if we weren't immigrants, our parents were. Somebody migrated from someplace. So this affects every household. And again, as I said before, it tends to be compartmentalized, but at the end of the day, if it wasn't for immigrants, if it wasn't for migrants, if it wasn't for the working class people, there would be no America, right? And so right now we're dealing with folks who are sitting on the sidelines because they don't like this guy and they don't like that guy. But at the end of the day, we're fighting for democracy so that we can continue to have a conversation and move towards a policy that benefits all migrants, because all of us are. So who are some of the real champions out there? Because we need to make sure we're supporting those individuals.
And some of us that were not willing migrants.
Right, precisely. Precisely. Well, and to your point, Crystal, these people that are coming now, and you did Violeta, I'm sorry, you did a great job explaining the fact that historically it has been the father who would come and make a way for the rest of the family. Same way with Black migration in the United States. A person would come up north and then the rest of the family would come. Well, now the whole family is having to escape because the situation is so dire. So what I'm asking for is, how do we help? How do we plug in? And Kelvin, we're going to definitely come to you because I know you too have this experience, and Bianca also has this experience, having come from another country and migrated here and done well. So we're going to ask Violeta to talk to us about who are some of our champions. We're going to ask Dr. Kelvin to come in, to pipe in, and Bianca, who's one of our regulars. We definitely want to hear from you guys. Go ahead.
So I think, the who are, first and foremost, I think we have to understand, who decides immigration policy is Congress. So, there's only so much, that can be done through executive action, which is, currently what's been happening, with the Biden administration. But before I go into the Congress conversation and what actually be done kind of like at that legislative level, I do think that it is very important that when we look at what's at the top of the ticket, the presidential and when we frame the choice to our communities, a Trump administration would be devastating for our immigrant communities. And again, just like we had the conversation last year about what some of the challenges and some of the barriers, given the political and like the global status of the world and what is happening, there's a lot of apathy, there's a lot of skepticism, there's a lot of pain that our communities are facing, because of what's happening and the terrible things that are happening in Gaza. And, there's accountability that needs to be happening, within the Biden administration and within, Democratic, to not for that to not continue under our watch. But but in spite of the apathy and in spite of, that I know anger that I have, to see what is happening, I do, it's hard for me to see in some of the primaries, some of the, the amount of people that can really break an election and really give it to a Trump administration when people are voting, and that's the unfortunate part of being in a two-party system. So that's the first and foremost, I think that having a president that is going to support, and again, it goes back to that accountability of who actually is able to make those decisions. So that is very, very important, and here in California, fortunately, we have, a congressional delegation for the most part, besides some of the Central Valley Republicans, or Republicans in Orange County, it's for the most part is much more progressive. So it is up to Congress. So if you are able to call your Congress, whoever your Congress person is, and urge them to, to pass immigration reform, state senators. So it is within the legislative branch, so U.S. Senate, Congress, those are the ones that get, they don't get to say, just, Republicans did last month that, it's like President Biden could just shut down the border. That is just not possible. So it is up to Congress. We have to continue to put pressure on Congress and the Senate to actually do bipartisan, immigration reform. So that's who can get stuff done.
That's perfect. Thank you for that education. Stephen our producer has his hand up. So I'm going to let him speak, and then I'm going to ask Dr. Kelvin to pop in. Stephen, are you there? Okay, so until we get Stephen, Kelvin, you want to take yourself off of mute and join the conversation.
Good morning, everybody. Good to be with you in this space for this profoundly timely conversation. Would like to just thank and appreciate Violeta's presentation and thoughts with us, because we have to come together to be in conversation about this. To quote James Baldwin, if they come for you this morning, they'll come for me tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's just be clear about that. It's all about the pendulum and which direction the pendulum will swing, right? Mm-hmm. And we ought to know, as African Americans, as Black immigrants, as migrants from anywhere, right? The pendulum always swings our way. It just takes turns. It's very important. So I think that brings us and holds us, together at the intersection of exclusion, exploitation, and discrimination. And so we have to find ourselves at that intersection, and that is not easy because we've all been pained and traumatized by the swinging pendulum, that started swinging even before 1619. So we cannot leave out our indigenous sisters and brothers, in this. In fact, they strengthen our message by saying, ain't nobody but them can talk about this is my country.
Yeah, yeah.
So by excluding them, we are actually undermining our power to be able to challenge, settler colonization and military occupation, which is what we're dealing with, right? You see, and one can add to that economic exploitation and add to that environmental degradation. Because everywhere this thing moves, the environment gets messed up. And guess who lives in those areas? From West Adams to Wilmington, they look like us. So having said all of that, I think it's very, very important. Of course, immigration, is and I appreciate, Robin, we're us using the word migration and not immigration, because it's the experience, one, but it also helps us connect emotionally, help us here, Isabel Wilkerson, to be able to connect, you see, with the fact that we've all been moving in this country, right? We've all been on a trail, right? Whether it's the Middle Passage, whether it's, the Trail of Tears, whether it's the pilgrimage, through the Sonora Desert, right? There's movement taking place, and we will always be at the center of this because it's the economy, stupid. Somebody said some time ago, right? And guess what? Economy equals migration. This country is built on the backs of migrants, whether they came from Europe, Irish, who became white, Italians who became white. I mean, you see what I'm saying? But you're right. Somebody put in the chat, the migration conversation, you know, we have a good time on St. Patrick's Day, but no one to talk about Irish Americans, right? We all white men. See what I'm saying, right? You know, so it's quite interesting, you know, that white folk don't want to, you know, acknowledge, you know, their migratory, you see, connections. You know, the president is doing it now. And of course, you know, the folk in Ireland, they're calling him out because of what the English did in Ireland in terms of genocide, right? So they say, you come from a people where genocide, you see what I'm saying? So that's the intersection that we find ourselves in. And we must embrace each other's pain and trauma, acknowledge it, affirm it, you know, and that's what I'm doing as a Black immigrant with African Americans, right? And Greg can tell you that. And so,
okay, you guys, what you guys don't know is this guy is a pastor and a minister.
Oh, yeah.
And he's quite eloquent.
Yeah, so
I'm gonna be real nice and just cut you right off.
and that's fine.
However, your message totally
Encouraging.
aligns with what Violeta has, the foundation that she's created. And I also wanted to make sure that I love what you said about, which is why she spoke about it. You know, we're in an election year. We're focused on the economy. We're focused on I'm not going to use the word immigration ever again, migration and resources. And so, you know, you have painted a picture that adds some historical context to all that we're talking about. Violeta, you want to pop in?
I think, you know, and kind of like to bring this to today and something that, you know, it just, you know, the Baltimore Bridge disaster, you know, and going back to those intersections of our communities, you know, from the moment before anything came out, you know, before we knew who were the, you know, the victims, before we knew anything about those migrant workers from Mexico, from Guatemala, from El Salvador, who were there working on that bridge in the cold, fixing the road of you know, to keep the economy going of that port. You know, that's the impact that our immigrant community has in a city like Baltimore, that is a majority Black city, and we're already working together for our economy. So before anything came out, the conspiracy theories were already out there that, you know, and it was first thing, you know, before what happened, shut down the border. You know, you had some of the, you know, right-wing, you know, commentators and congressmen and, you know, people in power, you know, saying things like that. You know, once, you know, the mayor, who is a young Black mayor, you know, worrying about how do we keep our, you know, how do we make sure that first and foremost we go in and we find those victims, you know, that we're working, and you know, there was already the attacks of, like, you know, the DEI mayor, you know, so all of this is very coded language that, you know, at the end of the day, we know what that means. You know, when you know, when the right wing co-opted woke, you know, or critical race theory, and all of the policies that have come out as a result of, you know, post, you know, 2020 and the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, all of that is, you know, going back to that pendulum. You know, the pendulum is swinging this other way. I'm so sorry, like there's such like it's a little bit loud. The trash is just picking up.
Don't worry about it. We don't hear it.
But yeah, so you know, the big, so right now, you know, so we are seeing it in that, you know, the intersection, and again, it's going back to resources, you know, that bridge, you know, that port drives the economy, not just in Baltimore, but all of the East Coast, you know, so that is why, you know, and why do we call, you know, a duly elected mayor that won overwhelmingly the, you know, his election, you know, to represent a community that looks just like him, but to you know, people outside, he is the DEI mayor, you know, and I heard him a beautiful, you know, interview with Joy Reid, where he said, you know, there's just code language because they don't want to use they don't want to use the language that they really want to use, but we all know what they're trying to do. So he shifted the message, and instead of, you know, but the is the duly elected incumbent, because he is a person, a Black man that is very proud of being the mayor of the work that he's doing. And that's what they don't want to see. They don't want to see us proud in our communities, being leaders in our communities. So that's why, you know, they're trying to take our rights to vote away in some areas. And for us here in California, where it's very easy, we have to continue to go out and show up to vote, to hold people accountable, because we matter, our communities matter, and this is how we are, you know, we're building our economy, we're together, you know, and in this very charged political climate that wants to continue to separate us, you know, we have an opportunity to come together as you know, because it's the divide and conquer. But at the end of the day, if we build together, we're building our economies together. Migrants are, you know, contributing to through taxes, through economic resources. Every time we go shop, you know, I see, you know, I am one generation. I moved here when I was 15 years old, and I'm a small business owner. I'm contributing, you know. So there's like me. There's many stories of success, of hope. You know, just to want to do better, to be better, and hopefully we continue to do that.
And hold up, and a shout out to my Alpha fraternity brother, Wes Moore, mayor of Baltimore. I got to put him as my Alpha brother here.
So Violeta, that was a great segue to ask Bianca to give us a few words of encouragement, because Bianca is from the islands and she's come here and built a quite successful business. And then we're going to have Dr. Vicky Mays come up in a few minutes. Bianca.
Hi, thank you, Robin. So I came into this country when I was 8 years old. Back then it was like totally different, because my mom literally left me in Haiti when I was 6 months old. So I did not meet my mom till I was 8. So that was a sacrifice, like you said earlier in the meeting, that one parent would go work, get their green card, and then hire a lawyer and bring their children here. So thank goodness all 5 of us came with green cards, you know, and so that allowed us a pathway to become, you know, become successful in this country. But I think it's a lot harder right now, because that's the same opportunity is not available, you know, and right now everybody's just trying to get a way to hide. But if we could somehow get immigration to not be like a weapon or something negative. I mean, I love to travel. So I go to Europe every year, and they depend on immigration in Europe. They don't have enough people in the European countries to keep the company's economy going. So, you know, so I think a lot of us in America think everybody wants to come to America, but no, everybody wants to find a safe way to raise their children, in a safe way where they can have an opportunity, you know, and succeed and be better than their parents. So that people are immigrating everywhere. Like when you go, I went to Australia, I couldn't even tell that I was in Australia, because it was like when I go to the restaurants, the same type of people that were serving me in the United States that are serving in Australia. You know, I mean, everywhere in Europe we go to, it's the same thing. It's a melting pot, and we do need each other, right? So making it possible, like for instance, all 5 of us that came here with green cards are all successful, all my brothers and sisters. My brother is opening his 6th restaurant downtown LA tomorrow. So the immigration, we don't come to this country to take, we come to contribute, but we have to have an opportunity to be able to contribute.
You know what, and to your point, I think that we all get that, you know, but yeah, we definitely want you to put in the chat box where the restaurant, because we need to support the brother, okay?
Also, I want to interject something, Bianca. You are a testament of the power of immigration, the process when you're doing it, and there's a difference between undocumented and documented. And I have Taliki Davis on the line. She works in the legal department in immigration. Taliki, 12 rather, can you give us a breakdown of what is the process to become legal? If you can unmute yourself. While she's unmuting herself, I pass the mic back over to you, Robert.
Violeta, I appreciate the fact that you always bring us historical context around this space, right? Bianca told us what her personal experience was. This person's going to talk about what it is to become legal, but at the end of the day, if we don't elect the right people, whatever laws they got on the books are not gonna, they're not gonna unfold for the benefit of the whole, right? And so I think that, tell us what we need to be watching out for,
So I think, one of the things that we need to keep in mind and understand, and, how legal versus illegal, and what the process, has, it's very different. I mean, the border as we know it, I mean, migration between Mexico and the United States, people have, freely migrated. I mean, some of the early, immigration laws were really to cut down on Chinese migration, and to control that, Chinese migration. So, so that's, what we, that's the context of like, how do, what we know that in Ellis Island, all of those, were, by today's definition would be illegal immigrants, but the process was such that you just came and you got your name on a, and now you're here. So again, like, how the process, and that's where we're at, because under international law, but this is why the asylum conversation, and and which is what the majority of the people that are currently showing up at the border, because they're showing up at the border, and it's not the picture that we think of, people trying to jump the fence, or and obviously we still have a lot of that, but the majority, the large majority of people are showing up to the border and presenting themselves and they're asylum seekers, which under international law, we have to process and give them the ability to make that case for asylum. So again,
refugees and immigrants. And so a lot of them are coming in are refugees because they're running from a oppressed government, which is the same thing the Jewish people did when they left Nazi Germany, and the same thing that happened in other countries that have their countries have become oppressed. The Cubans came here the exact same way. Any country, the Koreans came here that way. When you're coming from an oppressed country and you're trying to get a way to protect your country, your people, the Ukrainians are coming that way. Any country. So that's the difference. The Venezuelans are coming because of that. So that's the difference. So, but you can't lump them all into the same. They're not the same. And that's what we're seeing right now. What we're seeing is people coming from countries that have become, their countries have become oppressed. And US have a lot to do with that.
Yes.
and then the Trump administration, remain in Mexico policies, like they're, the fact of the matter is that, the people that the large majority of the people that are migrating are people that under international law have a right to a due process to seek asylum, to because of the economic political conditions that in some part for some of those countries have been created by the United States. So it is, but again, that cannot be fixed just by the president alone. You cannot, there were a lot of concessions that were made under HR 2, which is that bill that failed last month, and there were a lot of concessions, because it was truly a bipartisan bill where there was a lot of compromises that many folks in the immigrants community were surprised that the Biden administration agreed to, because he would have, but it was that compromise, because at the end of the day, going back to how resources just in that, in immigration, when you have the majority of money being funded to Border Patrol, to build a failed wall, that is not addressing the humanitarian and the real crisis that is happening at our border. What
Well, you know,
that
and
money, that the allocations needs to be on processing. That money needs to be on those, asylum, like those officers, those judges. That system that's going to help people move through the system instead of being stuck in this limbo, which is where we're currently at.
And to your point, we can't just, we can't operate in silos and only work on this silo right now, and then this becomes the most popular thing. Stephen has his hand up, and then Dr. Kelvin, we're gonna have you have something to say because we're coming up against the hour. Dr. Vicki Mays was here. She will be back. She's our medical correspondent. And so
I was going to give the floor over to Reverend Saul. Twill, are you ready?
I can say something. I'm not so sure that I could address the exact question that you posed to me.
Yes,
but the number one thing that I heard mentioned was voting. And voting is what's going to make the difference, because somehow we've lumped all of immigration to the border. And immigration is way bigger than the border. It's a whole lot more involved. And if we vote and if we have our voices heard, that's how we can make a difference. My expertise is in employment-based immigration. And the thing that I noticed with no matter which visa chargeability area, which country you come from, India, China, is education and working together and educating the group of people on how to work together, what they need to do, what resources to use and where to get them. And when those communities come together and they educate each other, they're able to make movements and to make change. And what I keep seeing as a big difference with, we'll say, migration, since that's the word of the day that we're using here, is the differences that we make with different people and different organizations. Because I look at the Haitians in Texas and what they decided to do with them rather than to give them, DACA or a way to come into the U.S., that we're treating the groups differently. So the way that we can make the best mark is through voting, having our voices heard.
Well, let me say this. We would love to have you come back and give us and do a presentation to educate us. Again, this is what the community briefing is about. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kelvin, and I'm going to tell you to keep it brief because you're coming back. You are definitely coming back as well, because again, the more educated we are, the more we can share this information in our community, and then we can grow with the lift. Dr. Kelvin.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key, if there's a word we're taking away from today, is intersectionality. Mm-hmm. So please write that word down, consume it, put it in your grits, in your coffee. Intersectionality, because that's life right now. Mm-hmm. The Black South African, I love an intersectional life, right? I in the morning before I joined here, I was on a call already with people back home in Joburg. Right, so it's an intersectional thing going on. So I think that's very, very important. Intersectionality is what the King talked about in terms of mutuality, what we talk about in South Africa as Ubuntu. And our sister said it right. They are different. The immigration arrangements are different based on country. Mm-hmm. I say unless we are willing to acknowledge and accentuate, right, the drivers of migration, we will only be dealing with the symptoms, y'all. And that's a longer conversation, because folk aren't coming up here just because they want to take a walk. Folk aren't coming out here because they know. They're coming out here because the U.S. foreign policy tentacles mm-hmm. towards countries of color is destructive, exploitive, and there's a deceptive understanding, around this. So I think that's very, very important for us, to understand. And the last thing I'll say is that we have to be clear. U.S. domestic policy to communities of color is the same or similar, I should say, than U.S. foreign policy to countries of color.
That's true.
Yeah. See, so we have to understand, that what happened in South LA around, the jobs that that African Americans had, that had nothing to do with immigrants. It had to do with corporate America and decisions made in suites that then affected the streets. So yeah, but I think, again, this is an awesome, profoundly timely conversation and an ongoing conversation that we need to have. And I'm glad to, to run along with y'all because we've got to get this right. And right now, our administration is floundering miserably. Around them. And a lot of us are very concerned about how this will impact, the 2024 elections.
Okay, so Stephen, Dr. Reverend Souls is going to give you some contact information because we're going to bring you back. We want Ms. Young to come back, but Violeta, can you close us out? The E is in Spanish is E. I mean, I in Spanish is E, and I keep forgetting. Violeta, can you close us out, and then we'll make the announcement about who our presenter is for next week.
Yeah, no, I think that, Dr. Schultz, it's very much, right. And that there is some true intersectionalities and, there's, and we're talking, it comes down to the economy, it comes down to the resources and the opportunity that we have to continue to work together. One of our colleagues from the Ross program just forwarded me, some very large investments that are, the EPA just released some funding that's going to be going for affordable housing, $20 billion that, the federal government is releasing for innovation, for housing, luckily, a lot of the criteria and a lot of where that funding is supposed to be going is to our underserved communities. So now this is where we get to work together and continue to elect, those folks that are going to continue to invest in our communities, that we're going to continue to work together. And as, Black and Brown and Indigenous developers and working on economic, and financial literacy for our communities, this is our opportunity to continue to invest, but we have to be at those tables and we have to continue to have these collaborative conversations, and we have to continue to see our struggles as those that are very much intersection, at the intersection of so many issues. But we're in this together, and the only way that, they want to see us separate, they want to see us fighting for resources, because that is, they want us in that craft mentality that we're, when there's limited economic resources, we're all fighting for the same pie. But guess what? It's much bigger. They just want us to think that it's this small, because they want us to keep us focused on that, that we're the enemy, othering each other. But when in reality, we are building our communities together. We care about continuing to make those investments. So I'm really, and we have to continue to work together to elect the people that are going to support our communities and hold them accountable so they actually do the work in supporting our communities.
That is great. We appreciate the relationship that you built with the community briefing. And we thank you for, sharing your time. Bianca, every time we let you talk, we learn something new that is beautiful about you and your family. Reverend Souls, I'm so glad you joined the family, because I know you have a lot to share and a lot to say. And Emma is the queen of voting. She's the queen of voting education. So it's good to see you. Joseph, always, you always add excellent contacts. And Keith is our new person that I don't know, but we're glad to have you today. And we hope that this isn't your last time. Okay, good. All right,
and Robin, I think what Dr. Saul talked about, the intersectionality is important. So, and what Violeta just said about the closing the silos, because if we create that one voice, we need to create that one voice in the Black community. We need to create that one voice with the Hispanic community. We need to create that one voice with the Asian community. We need, as minorities, as people of other colors, we need to create one voice so that America knows that they wanted a fabric, interracial fabric in this country. So we are that fabric. We are the multiracial fabric of America. we need to have a voice that's intersection, because that's what they wanted. But we cannot be divided. We have to speak loud in order for everyone to hear. So this vote right now, we have Delmy, we have Keith, we have Dr. Sauls, we had earlier, we had Carly, who is from China. We had a multi-ethnic culture here on the community briefing. And we had us, those of us that are African American. We need to keep this up. We need to bring everyone together, because that is how we change America to look like what it was designed to look like in the very beginning. And when we do that, and we then go to the polls to represent us as this this multi-fabric country, then we make change in this country and we stop dividing us. We're allowing them to divide us. And so we are here to help you, Violeta, get your voice out, and then we get everybody's voice out. But we have to stop working in silos to make that happen. So we want to thank you.
One last thing I want to say. I remember Reverend Pastor Murray said many, many years ago, he don't like gumbo because everything's all mixed up. He prefers to call it a salad bowl, because then you can see the lettuce, you can see the carrots, you can see the tomatoes, you can see everything that's in there. And so what you just described was this international salad.
That's right.
And I've been to South Africa. I absolutely love it. I've been to Mexico. I can't understand why. If you ain't violent, you wouldn't voluntarily leave there if you wouldn't have a reason to be there.
That's right.
I've been to other countries. I've been to Egypt. I've been to other places. And if you didn't have a reason to leave, you wouldn't be leaving. So there must be a reason why you left. So, but while we're here, let's work together. And let's make sure it's a better place for all of us to live here while we're here. But we need to voice why we're here together. And we can't fight. We can't interfight to help them fight against us. That's what has to happen. We can't buy into the fight.
Well, I think Reverend Murray got it wrong when he talked about gumbo. That's for sure.
I agree.
I can certify on that one. I agree with most of what he said, but no, he got that wrong. You give me gumbo or salad. I don't know. I'm for sure taking the gumbo.
No, I didn't say
I don't know about
from
y'all,
an eating perspective. I didn't say from an eating perspective. From a contextual.
Just have to clear that up. I think Stephen had to jet out of here, but our guest next week is Mark E. Henderson, and he's the mayor at Gardena, also one of my dear fraternity brothers, Alpha. So he will be joining us next week. Also want to have you guys join me in our prayers and lift up Reverend Sauls in the recent homegoing. I think, is this your oldest brother?
My oldest brother transitioned.
Oldest brother just passed recently in South Africa. So, our prayers with you, with you and your family. So we definitely keep you uplifted there.
Oh, many blessings and prayers. My best friend is from Cape Town. In fact, they're leaving. Her family lives. They're going for her 80th birthday. I was there for her 50th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And that's their second home. I love that place. It's absolutely amazingly beautiful. Her husband has businesses there.
They want to leave it. When they got shipwrecked over there and they saw where they got shipwrecked, they like, we kind of like this place over here.
Oh yeah, man. It's wow. It's like the coastline of California to the 10th power, boy. It's pretty.
Yeah, Emma was with me on a group there, and she can tell you. I mean, it is just, it's breathtaking.
Yeah, it's amazing. I had gone before Emma went, and I told them it's the most beautiful. No one prepared me for how beautiful Cape Town was, and it was just, everyone has said it's beautiful, but nothing to what I saw. So
I shared a birthday with Mandela.
Okay, all right.
We take that. We take that.
So if you guys haven't had an opportunity, go to South Africa. Go to Cape Town. It's absolutely beautiful. You will love it. It's an amazing experience, amazing experience. And then, you know, visit Africa as well, other countries as well. That's what I want to do, visit all countries. So because you get a different aspect. I was just telling them as I was coming on here, my niece daughter and my niece granddaughter is in Egypt. So this morning I was doing conflict resolution with a baby that's turning 2. And my daughter was calling, going, "What am I supposed to do with this child? I had cleaned up oil and detergent all over the kitchen, so I was late coming, trying to teach her how to discipline a child going through the terrible twos, all the way 10,000 miles away."
So, you know what that's called? That's called transnational parenting. Okay,
Exactly. That's it.
Transnational parenting, and I can't get there until October, so I got to do this in between stuff on Facebook.
I love it.
So I'm doing transparenting, grandparenting internationally.
Transnational grandparenting.
Greg, you better get her. You know, she starts talking about travel, and then all of us, it's 6 minutes after the hour, young lady.
Okay, so I'm gonna change the. But it's just amazing, and I'm trying to do the great. Now here's interesting for